Township on December 2nd by a vote of 325 to 20, so overwhelming support for this agreement. The agreement is a 3-year agreement providing for a 3% merit increase plus a longevity award that will be added to base salary on the number of consecutive years that the CWA member has been employed. It begins with a $50 award at the completion of year 1 and incrementally increases until the 31st anniversary is reached, and the award is capped at $500. The agreement also includes updates to all of our job descriptions that were done through the PSPC, and also incorporates previously agreed upon MOU language. It also codifies the practice of providing a 5% increase for promotions and or a 5% decrease for demotions. It eliminates threshold hours for part-time employees to complete their probationary period and have an evaluation completed. It also clarifies that any emergency pay and or administrative leave will be at the city manager's discretion. The agreement eliminates providing retired employees with any sick leave that was used in conjunction with a workers' comp accident. All of our pay tables have been updated as per the PSPC agreement and for this agreement, and we also did add language that we will make sure that our pay plan does stay current with whatever minimum wage that goes into effect through the life of the contract. We are asking for retro going back to October 1st, and the total cost is anticipated to be $4.4 million. Funding is available in the current year budget, and future budgets will include the contract cost in the proposed budgets. The CWA is here as well in case you have any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Poyer? Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah. You said, or it says deleted language allowing temporary appointments to count towards probationary period. Does that mean those temporary appointments will now count towards?
That's correct, that they will no longer count.
Oh, they will no longer count?
No.
Okay. And then clarification on deleted language placing laid-off employees on the employment eligibility list for their designated job classification and any other job classification of a lower level they are qualified for. So does that mean that if they're laid off that they're not notified or they can't choose a?
No, not at all. So it's just clarifying that only people that are demoted based on, not through something of their own. So for example, there are people who take voluntary demotions. They are not placed on that list. So it's clarifying that language that it's just for, the people will only go on that list if they have been involuntarily demoted for things that are not related to discipline.
And then each paycheck, if someone is bilingual, they get an extra $25?
If they have gone through the certification and testing, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Those are the questions I had. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Consent?
Yes, the CWA would like to make a small comment. We would like to thank council, thank upper management, thank HR for the time and effort that they gave working with us to achieve and come to the point that we are now with this contract for the next 3 years. It's been a pleasure to work with Jennifer and her staff in achieving this, and we are grateful for the time and effort that you all have put into this.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming this morning. Consent?
Yes.
All right. 7.1.
Approve a proposal by construction manager at risk Coors Construction Inc. of Pinellas Park, Florida, in the amount of $91,147.54 for the construction of a storage building and demolition of the existing restroom building at Moccasin Lake Nature Park, located at 2750 Park Trail Lane. Transfer $10,635.52 from CIP 315-93612 McMullen Tennis Complex, and $12,590.01 from CIP 315-93635 Park Amenities to Moccasin Lake Nature Park, CIP 315-93648, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Hallius.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jim Hallios, Parks and Recreation Director. The item we have before you is for a storage shed out of the Moccasin Lake Nature Park. When the renovation was originally conducted in 2018-2019, the storage shed facility was demolished along with the back office area. Subsequently, with the remodel, we had hoped to repurpose the old Clavis building After we got in there and took a look at it and had various reports from engineers and our construction managers, turned out we couldn't use that building. We'd have to knock the whole thing down. And then also, for lack of a better word, the Clavis is an outhouse. So we would need to take care of the waste that was in there as well. So what this item allows us to do is to install a shed further out where, I don't know if you're familiar where the old, the windmill is in the kind of that old area that used to be, I want to say we had a solar greenhouse area kind of out there low. That's where we're going to be putting this storage shed, so that way staff can park the vehicles in there and equipment that's needed. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Halios? Councilmember
So
Hamilton.
this is strictly a storage shed, and we're tearing down some bathrooms, but there are other restroom facilities out there
Yes.
existing.
When we remodeled the building, we redid the bathrooms also, so the bathrooms can be accessed from the outside. You don't really need to go into the building. So they were redundant, and then that was why we looked to utilize that space, but unfortunately we couldn't.
And exactly how big is this storage unit for?
I'll have to check, but I would say it's going to be one of those, it's a storage shed, kind of a one that you would buy pre-packaged, not a smaller one, but an
Is it a steel
industrial
building,
size.
or?
I believe so. I would need to double check that, I'm pretty sure.
Other questions or comments? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. 7.2.
Approve a purchase order with M. Gay Constructors, Inc. of Jacksonville, Florida, per ITB 19-0035 PR in the amount of $169,470.40 for lighting the tennis courts at Morningside Recreation Complex and a change of scope of the Morningside Recreation Center Project CIP 315-93251 to include the lighting of tennis courts, transfer $131,651.99 from retained earnings at first quarter, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Halios again.
Jim Hallius again. This item relates back to 2018, where the Parks and Rec Board had made a recommendation to council about lighting the Morningside tennis courts. For those council that were not on the, those members of council that were not present during 2009, this relates back to the Great Recession, and when those Morningside tennis courts were redone, the lights were taken out, and the courts were, I want to say, put down from either 5 or 6 down to the current number 4 that we have out there. And then subsequent with that, we had went through a corporate decision of only lighting 2 satellite tennis courts in the city. Due to use and the Morningside Recreation Center being back open and the subsequent having staff on site and more of an active recreation center, the Parks and Rec Board made a recommendation. They wanted us to look at any type of capital savings that we had from the construction of the Morningside complex to use for the lighting project. Staff came back in October of 2019 to inform council that we did not have any subsequent savings. So we brought this item before you. We did actually, once all the closeouts were done, did recognize savings, I want to say in the amount of, I want to say $31,000. I can't really see it on here. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that.
Questions for Mr. Halios? Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I remember years ago, is this a pay for, I mean, we're putting it in, but if somebody wants to play at night, do they have to pay for the lighting? Or is this just on it just to a certain time?
No, it's on to a certain time. We had done that years ago where people would put coins in and it was a meter on a dial. And just the amount of maintenance of it, yeah, having to go out there and collect it. And it wasn't worth staff time. It was just, it was more of an efficiency issue, and it wound up not being worth it.
The juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Other questions? Councilmember Hamilton.
I'm guessing, obviously, with the new lighting technology, these are LEDs, I'm guessing.
I don't believe so. I think due to the cost difference, I'll need to look at that to get back to you. But we did price that out with the lights that were done here and also the lights that were done in McMullen, because we needed to have a certain candle size out there, so that we'll double check on that, and I'll get back to you.
But and the direction of the lighting is centered on the courts themselves, so it doesn't illuminate the neighbors' backyards and.
Yes, and these lights are going to be much more efficient than the lights that were previously out there, so the direction of that lighting, you are correct, it'll be we'll have much more control and be able to aim that better than the lights that were out there that were, 20-plus years old.
Councilmember Beckman.
So Morningside Rec Center out there, so I was out there this weekend with their holiday celebration, which was fun. So they have lit enclosed basketball courts, they have a tennis complex, they have a heated pool, and now they would like $7,000 a year for lit tennis courts.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And then I'm thinking, how many hours would those lights be on? So, I don't know, do you probably close the complex at 10 at night, and then during the summer, it's light pretty late at, up to 8:30, I think, right? And so we'd have these lights on certain times of the year more than others. 7,000 seems like a whole lot of money. I don't, for how many hours of use. And, I just think that, I just wonder about a whole bunch of resources going into that part of the city, that neighborhood, versus some others. But I know, I play tennis a little bit, and up in the Midwest, when we wanted to play in the winter, I couldn't afford paying a chunk of money for lights for an indoor thing, because the lights were real expensive. But is there a big desire, a big need? People really use those courts and want to have lit courts at night between, I guess in the winter here, it would be between 5 and 10 if they're open till 10.
Yeah, there was big desire for having those courts relit. The question was raised that McMullen is right up the street, and that is a lit facility. But at the times, in the brackets of time that you're looking at to play tennis, they are full at that time. So there is not an overabundance of lit courts. There is a need out there for the players to have the courts lit, and that's why they came forward to the Parks and Rec Board, and subsequently the Parks and Rec Board made that recommendation to council.
Mr. Horn.
Yes, I'd just like to respond to Councilmember Beckman. There are times when all of our neighborhoods that have rec centers where they will advocate for certain levels of service. Morningside is no different. That's why the previous council, had made a series of decisions in response to the neighborhood leaders and the neighborhood residents' advocacy. So it's difficult at times for us to respond to your questions when we really are responding consistently over time, to how the council wanted to address this. So we wouldn't bring this forward unless we felt it achieved, council direction and goals. And so to answer your question, yes, we think it's appropriate, and that's why we're recommending it. Now, if you think differently, then you need to tell us, that. But we're very consistent in coming forward, bringing forth these kinds of actions, and we feel like, at least from our professional opinion, this resolves an issue that has been longstanding.
Yeah, well, and if residents are asking for this, and if residents in different other parts of our city are not asking for particular things for their rec center right now, then they can garner support and come and ask for what they'd like, right?
Well,
different communities.
if we go back historically, the city commission, and I will go to Pinafore Pinellas 2, I think they created a list where their goal was to raise the level of quality of life throughout the city, all areas. So there is nothing inconsistent about this. Also, you're going to get requests from all over the city, and historically the council has tried to accommodate them unless there was some financial issue that they felt like they just couldn't support.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Well, I also recall part of this agenda item, part of the discussion we had previous council was with Imagine Clearwater, we're going to be removing lighted tennis courts from the bayfront. So we wanted to make sure by putting these lights out at Morningside, we're creating tennis court, keeping the number of courts available in the evenings
Somewhere.
And this seemed like a reasonable alternative to us. So and I recall having that discussion. And I think Councilmember Albritton was part of that discussion as well. But it was, the fact that we're going to be losing courts off of the Bayfront because of Imagine Clearwater, putting these lights in Morningside made pretty good sense.
Yeah, and Councilmember Hamilton is correct. That's a 4-for-4 swap when we remove 4 from the Bayfront and then adding 4 out at Morningside. And to speak to your other question, they are LED lights. Okay. So this will enable us, this is the first set of kind of our satellite tennis courts that have these LED lights. So we're going to be able to do a cost-benefit analysis to see if that extra money for this infrastructure at this point in time is going to pay off when we look to redo lights at other tennis courts throughout the city. So that'll be a bonus for us as well with this pilot program.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Call, is there any reason this can't go on consent? No. Okay. Councilmember Beckman, do you want this on consent or do you want to vote on it on Thursday?
I think it's fine on consent.
Okay. Very good. 7.3.
Approve adding 3 new full-time positions to the Parks and Recreation Department in order to provide enhanced maintenance for Crest Lake Park. Approve a first quarter budget and amendment allocating $172,800 from general fund reserves and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Halios again.
Jim Halios, Parks and Recreation Director. The item that we have before you relates to the addition of a Parks Service foreman and 2 Parks Service technicians for a total of 3 staff out at Crest Lake Park. When council approved the construction of Crest Lake Park back in February of 2020, due to the enhanced features of the park and the desire to have it as more of a regional park instead of a neighborhood park, there is a need to have staff presence there throughout the week during the times that the park is open, especially with bathrooms needing to be maintained. There's a spray park and a lot of different elements in that park that we usually do not have. And when you couple that with the landscaping that's been enhanced, adding a sprinkler system to where we didn't have it before in large patches of this park, then it's gonna require a lot more maintenance and a higher level of maintenance. And the hope is that we'll be able to combine this set of staff here with Imagine Clearwater when that comes online. So again, we'll have a supervisor in place that will be able to kind of work in conjunction with both of those properties.
Questions for Mr. Halios?
Just to-
Councilmember Beckman.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so there will be a physical body, a Parks and Rec employee there 7 days a week for a minimum of 8 hours a day?
Yes, park hours per ordinance are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Again, we will, look to have it staffed that entire time. But again, we don't plan on having the restrooms open until 9 p.m. That would probably be a dawn to dusk endeavor. So again, based on use, will dictate how we allocate those staff hours. But that is correct. For a minimum of 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, there will be a Parks and Rec employee on site.
I just can't miss the opportunity to point out that this proves that parks are in fact not free. Not only are they costly to build, but they're costly to maintain. So this is $250,000 a year once we get to a full fiscal year. Consent?
Yep.
All right, 8.1.
Approve supplemental work order to engineer of record McKimmon Creed of Clearwater, Florida in the amount of $68,860 for lift station 25 horse main, increasing the work order from $148,614 to $217,474, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. My name is Jeremy Brown. I'm engineering manager for utilities. Just a quick refresher on this project. We have a force main that runs along Countryside Boulevard. It's had 2 breaks recently, and so this project was to determine whether we wanted to replace the entire line or just a couple of areas. And so we've done an initial evaluation that identified 2 hydrogen sulfide gas pockets, and over time those gas pockets is what helps break down the pipes, and they end up breaking. So this supplemental work order before you today is to perform a little additional data collection so we can better define where those are, so we can go and replace the pipe. Happy to respond to any questions.
Questions? I don't know if I want to ask this question. How do gas pockets form?
It's just a part of the makeup of wastewater, basically. It just gets in there. And it comes out of solution, basically. And then the interesting part is it's not the gas, it's not the hydrogen sulfide that actually break down the pipe. That there's bacteria that eat the hydrogen sulfide, and then they excrete acid, and that's what breaks down the pipes. Pretty interesting.
That's why I almost didn't want to ask, so. Okay,
Any more?
consent,
Chemistry was not much.
moving
fun.
right along, 8.2.
Approve supplemental work order to engineer of record Stantec Consulting Services of Tampa, Florida for Lift Station 16 in the amount of $248,966, increasing the work order from $198,608 to $447,574, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown again.
Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager for Utilities. Lift Station 16 is located towards the western end of Pierce Street. That's immediately south of the proposed Imagine Clearwater site. We have another utilities project that is developing a master plan for the wastewater collection system, and that project identified the need to increase the capacity of this lift station. So then we had Stantec, who's the engineer for this project, do an analysis to see if they could use the existing wet well and just replace the pumps, or if we had to do a new lift station and a new wet well rather. And they identified that yes, we do need a new wet well. And so this supplemental before you today is for the additional effort to do a new wet well instead of just renewing and replacing the existing lift station. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Questions, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, this lift station, is that on the other, it's on the other side of Pierce? Is it up next to the bridge? Is that where it is?
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw them last year looking at all that. And it was kind of interesting because it looked like there was some kind of a building or something underground near the old school there.
I'm not sure about a building. This particular lift station, I mean, these wet wells, they go maybe 20 feet down into the ground. I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of a building, nor do I know where the old school is.
Yeah, kind of on the bluff as it went down, there was a door that looked like it went into the bluff.
Oh, really?
I'm not really sure what that is.
Well, there was also a lift station that was right below City Hall at one time, and Calvary, back in the day,
Yeah,
which was
That was actually
quite
this-
odoriferous.
yeah,
Yeah.
where it's located now is the new location
Right.
of the old one that you're talking about.
okay, thank you.
Now, the life expectancy of a new wet well is what? And does the fact that where we're talking about, I don't know that you can go 20 feet down. You're gonna hit water down in that area much sooner. And with the salt content of it, does that obviously creates a lessening of the life expectancy?
I mean,
type
well,
of
they'll
thing?
certainly have to de-water, and the existing one is 20 feet down, so the new one will go at least that deep. But they are made of concrete, right? And then we line the concrete with different materials. Those materials may break down over time, but then we go back in and we line it again.
Okay.
They hold up for a very long time.
Consent?
Thank you.
8.3.
Approve supplemental work order 2 to engineer of record Cardno Inc. in the amount of $73,600 to complete archaeological excavation of the North Greenwood Cemetery, increasing the work order from $60,846 to $134,446, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. DeSico.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. I'm Joe DeSico. I'm a Senior Environmental Specialist with the Engineering Department. Asking for the approval of a supplemental work order 2 to complete an archaeological excavation of the former North Greenwood Cemetery. The objective of this stage is to verify or to ground truth GPR findings that were previously completed for the former site. Archaeologists with Cardno and USF completed the GPR surveys, and they identified 54 anomalies that are consistent with graves. The ground truthing is not intended to exhume or disturb human remains. It will begin by carefully scraping back soil in high probability areas to expose possible grave shafts. Once grave shafts are identified, it will be a very controlled excavation completed with hand tools. Again, the goal is to confirm the presence or lack of a coffin, but not to intrude in any human remains. Cardno will issue a summary report at the end that they will submit to the City of Clearwater and State Historic Preservation Office. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Are the Pinellas County Schools going to share in any of the cost of this truthing?
Yes, we're splitting the cost.
Okay, so this is half of the total cost? Okay.
Other questions or comments? Consent?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
8.4,
Approve the final plat of the Clearwater Gas Complex physically located at 777 Maple Street, located on the southwest corner of Myrtle Avenue and Maple Street. Mr. Mahoney.
Morning, Council. Tom Mahoney, Engineering Department. So this plat will combine two older subdivisions platted in the 20s together with a portion of vacated East Avenue and also a railroad spur previously bought by the gas department. There's also an old railroad spur that runs up through a portion of that property that was abandoned by CSX or the previous railroad that will now be dissolved by virtue of this plat. The site consists of 7.8 acres more or less, and this was approved through DRC on September 15th of this year. I'll answer any questions you might have.
any questions? Don't have much of a choice, do we?
Well, your city attorney can answer that.
I'm kidding. Consent?
Yeah.
All righty.
Although if the vice mayor would like, I can answer that question about that bunker out there.
Oh,
the
okay,
lift
yeah.
station. That was part of part of that school, which previously was an office building. And it housed generators and mechanical room to provide power to that structure.
Oh, okay.
It was associated to the Calvary before Calvary bought it, it was there.
Okay, is that still there? I mean, it's just,
The buildings, the structure's still there, there's nothing in it.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. 8.5,
Ratify and confirm supplemental 3 work order to engineer of record ACOM of Tampa, Florida for the Sunset Point Road and Betty Lane utility relocation project in the amount of $32,612, increasing the work order from $85,828 to $118,440, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown again.
Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager for Utilities. Pinellas County is constructing stormwater improvements along Sunset Point Road from Douglas Avenue to Kings Highway. During construction, there are some unknown conflicts, namely a 16-inch water main and a proposed stormwater box culvert that was at a stream crossing. The item before you today is for the additional engineering services related to that additional work. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
questions? Consent?
Yeah.
8.6,
Accept a 10-foot utility easement from 1990 North McMullen Booth Road, LLC, for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city utility facilities on real property located at 3055 Union Street, and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Burzak.
Morning, Robert Burzak, Real Estate Service Coordinator. The utility easement will allow the city rights for construction, installation, and maintenance of city facilities on the site. Happy to answer any questions.
any questions for Mr. Burzak? All right, we'll talk about that one on Thursday. 9.1,
Approve the annexation, initial future land use map designation of residential urban, and initial zoning atlas designation of low-medium density residential district for 1266 Sediva Circle North, and pass the appropriate ordinances on first reading. Mr. Guevara.
Morning, Diego Guevara, Senior Planner. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.16 acre property consisting of one parcel of land occupied by a single family dwelling. The applicant is requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city. The property is located within an enclave and is contiguous to existing city boundaries on all sides. The annexation of the property will eliminate an enclave. It is proposed that the property be assigned a future land use map designation of residential urban and zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential.
Any questions on item 9.1? 9.2.
Approve the annexation, initial future land use map designation of US 19 Regional Center and initial zoning atlas designation of US 19 District for a portion of 2970 Gulf to Bay Boulevard and pass the appropriate ordinances on first reading. Mr. Brother.
Thank you. Kyle Brotherton, Planning and Development. So this voluntary annexation petition involves 0.067 acres of property consisting of a portion of one parcel of land which is currently occupied by a vacant commercial building. The applicant's requesting annexation in order to bring the entire property into the city's jurisdiction, which would allow for a unified site plan. The property is contiguous to the city limits on all sides and will eliminate an enclave once annexed. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
9.3.
Approve a maintenance memorandum of agreement with the State of Florida Department of Transportation for the maintenance of the aesthetic features and components related to the City of Clearwater identification signage and associated lighting on the pedestrian bridge crossing US 19 at Horn Boulevard, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Ms. Matzke.
Good morning, Lauren Matzke, Planning and Development. FDOT anticipates beginning construction on this pedestrian overpass. It'll go across US 19 in the vicinity of Harn Boulevard, and they anticipate construction starting somewhere in late spring, early summer of next year. At the city's request, they have incorporated signage on the south side of the bridge reflecting the city's brand, so the city logo, City of Clearwater, bright and beautiful Bay to Beach. This item is for the maintenance memorandum of agreement required by FDOT, which outlines the city's maintenance requirements related to that signage, including maintaining the signage, the LED lighting, and the fencing that's directly in support of the signs. The MOA also states that the city agrees to sweep and remove litter from the bridge as needed, and then outlines the department's specific responsibilities. With that, I can answer questions.
Questions for Ms. Matzke? Councilmember Hamilton.
Actually, my question's more on the construction side, because this is the maintenance agreement is what we're discussing here. But as far as the construction of this, I'm assuming that there's going to have to be like a center support right in the middle of 19. It's not, or is the span going to go from one side to the other with no center support at all?
I don't think I brought that drawing with me, but I can provide some information on that.
Because my question now becomes, as far as scheduling and you know, traffic maintenance, is most of that work going to be done at night versus during the day? Because it's going to that would require lane closures and everything else on 19 right there.
They've already stated it's going to occur at night because we've had some questions
It is going to be at night.
about that. Does the pedestrian overpass in Countryside, does it have a center support? I don't recall.
I don't believe it does.
Sure.
That's a big span.
I have certain drawings back at my desk that I can get to you, just to clarify anything with their project manager.
Not imperative to this agenda item, so you're fine.
So if we didn't have the sign, would we still be maintaining, sweeping and whatnot?
Yes, DOT
Okay.
is asking that of their local partners.
Okay, so that doesn't, by having the sign, it doesn't change it.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Consent?
Yep.
10.1.
Authorize equipment leases with Hewlett Packard Company of Murray Hill, New Jersey for desktop, laptop, and tablet computers for the term of January 1, 2021 through July 31st, 2021 in an amount not to exceed $280,000 in accordance with City Code of Ordinances Section 2.564, other governmental entities bids, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, council members, Dan Mayer, Information Technology Director. This is an approval for our next round of leases. It is shortened because due to COVID, the NASBO and the national contract, which most of the leases occur under, has not been processed yet. So we expect by mid-year that a new contract will be out, and I'll be back before you for the balance of the lease cycle. This approval will take us through the first 3 shipments for the year. There's 4. So that's the approval. When it comes back to you in its entirety, it'll be approximately 1.85 million total. So the difference is what I'll come back for in hopefully May.
Questions for Mr. Mayor? Consent? 10.2.
Ratify and confirm additional computer leasing obligations and expenditures over the 2017-2020 leasing period. Approve an increase to contract number 900099 in an amount of $680,000 for a new total of $2,150,000 to Hewlett Packard Financial Services Company of Murray Hill, New Jersey for desktop, laptop, and tablet computers, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Mayor again.
Dan Mayer again. As I've shared with the council, this is a correction for some decisions that we made in a number of areas. We have routine upgrades that departments do. We made a very large investment at the early part of the pandemic to outfit more of our employees with mobile devices and ultimately cameras so they could do more remote meetings. And there's some cleanup from some other issues with billing that occurred over the last number of leases. So in full disclosure, I have those numbers. The numbers that are on the agenda item are more specific after we've done some detailed analysis. But this will take us through the, I believe, the 24 and finish out this last lease cycle.
Questions for Mr. Mayor? Consent?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. 11.1.
Approve the 2021 state legislative agenda. Council members, in your agenda packs, I have the list of items that the staff has identified for the next legislative session. That does not mean it's complete. There, as we all know, there are items that do come up during session. And as those items come up, I will bring those and discuss with you after discussing it with our lobbyists. But I have shared this information with our lobbyists as well. And so I can go over the items list by list, or just answer questions how you wish to proceed.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, there's a lot of good things on this that we've been talking about through the last year. Got a question though. You got issues to support and then issues to oppose. It looked to me that preemption of local government's ability to regulate Airbnb rentals, isn't that related to the repeal state preemption of vacation rental properties?
It is related to it, and I think one is that we still want to fight for maintaining our ability since we are grandfathered in. But this was specific because at a time there was an effort to do this. So it's related, but it's 2 different issues.
Okay, understand.
One is a little bit more broad than the other.
Well, I'm glad to see we've got a couple of things in here on the, may solve some of the mooring issues we've got.
I'll go ahead and discuss that. So we did, after speaking with our lobbyists, we did find out that there is a bill that is being filed by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. So I did authorize the Fish and Wildlife Commission to establish a derelict vessel prevention program and allow law enforcement to relocate vessels at risk of becoming a public nuisance, as well as designating all waters to the state to be no discharge zones and penalize individuals who discharge sewage treated or untreated from any vessel. So I think that will also help us address some of the issues that we're having in the channel.
Yes.
That's great.
Other questions, comments? Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things, that I think you call for expanded emphasis on mental health, I think, right?
Increasing funding for mental
Yeah.
health services.
Can we also support expansion of Medicaid in Florida? It kind of goes along with that. And then I would hope that we would support any legislation that relates to renewable energy goals or third-party purchase of solar, things like that?
I believe under issues to support, if I can find it. There was legislation filed last year, and I believe it has been refiled this year, and to establish a framework, although it's state water infrastructure, but there's also sustainability utility practices as well. And I think that topic might encompass there, but if you want me to have it as a separate statement, I can.
Okay. And then I had put some notes on my agenda this weekend. I thought that there was another item that the lobbyists are going to present. Is that, am I missing it, or
No, they
later
will-
in the meeting?
Well, they'll be discussing on Thursday, they will be coming to the council meeting, and they will present highlights for the upcoming session, and also report on their efforts regarding the mooring situation. So they had been working with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, so that's why I added the two last bullets under issues to support, because the legislation that they're looking to enact does benefit us in that regard.
Other questions or comments? Are we going to add any specific asks for the city? I know it's going to be a lean budget year. I got chided recently from one of our legislators who said, you know, last year the city didn't ask for anything. They would have been happy to carry water for
I
us.
have reached out to staff regarding our, any funding requests, whether it be grants or through a legislative appropriation request, because those have changed since the last time you were on council. You do still have to submit a grant application for them, but I have not received any feedback. So at this point, I'm not sure we're ready for them. One of the issues right now with the funding request is that they have to be ready. So you can't ask for funding for design or funding for a proposal unless you really know the project is ready and shovel ready. So we might be at that situation right now.
Well, it seems like Imagine Clearwater is a perfect example of a shovel-ready project, so.
I'll reach out to staff again and see if I can get some feedback. But
One other thing, and I wasn't on council, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the state has mandated that individuals can use their open carry into public parks. Is that still intact?
I believe, I'll have to double check, but that.
You mean that they're allowed to do open
They
carry?
are.
Yes, that is correct.
That is a real problem with a lot of the promoters for concerts. They have metal detectors and they don't want people carrying in firearms. And with Imagine Clearwater being what it is, I think that could cause us issues down the road. And I personally think we ought to try to get ahead of it.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Anybody had any conversation with our Pinellas County delegation on this?
Not on that issue.
We'll need to do some missionary work.
And I'm sure it won't be one that they, you know, welcome a carve-out for this specific instance, but I know for a fact Live Nation will not do a concert if there's open carry is allowed. So we may be eliminating some of the people that we're working with just because of the state law.
They've been consistently aggressive with us about that issue. So maybe we'll get a chance to, when Pete and Martha are here, to kind of get a sense of what the mood is in Tallahassee.
This afternoon to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you all feel, but I think it's something that ought to be on our list.
I'll add it.
Anything?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem, you know, if they just give home rule a chance, you know, as home rule, are we allowed to say, we're not gonna allow open carry into a performance at the band shell? I don't have a problem as sitting here saying I'm comfortable not allowing open carry into that. Now that, if you wanna open carry in the rest of the park when there's not a performance going on, well, I'd rather you not. I'm not gonna say no, but I think we ought to have the ability to say, No, we don't want that.
Alcohol and guns are always a bad combination,
Not good.
so. Anything else? All right. Item 12.1.
Request authority to settle the case of Clearwater versus Wiley et al., case number 18-6639-CI. Mr. Fuino.
Thank you, Ms. Aiken. Mayor, members of council, Michael Fuino, Assistant City Attorney. This agenda item requests authority to settle a lien foreclosure case the city has instituted. The property is residential, has been brought into compliance, and is currently under sale. The owner has offered to pay $20,000, in which case the city would dismiss the case and release the lien to allow the closing to go through. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Fuino? Councilmember Beckman.
I'm fine with this. The only suggestion I would have or information that I think is pertinent is when we attach this kind of a thing to the agenda, that if the owner is going to settle for $20,000, I'd like to know if we could articulate what the accrued liens were, so that people just know we're going from this to this. That's all.
Didn't we go from 550 or so?
It was around that area.
Pretty significant discount. Consent? Okay. 12.2.
And that's the confirm COVID-19 emergency proclamation and adopt the resolution.
Any questions? All right. 13.1.
Mayor and council, Mayor and I met with an individual who was advocating that we find a place in Clearwater to dock a U.S. Coast Guard cutter that is being decommissioned at some point in the future. So I've asked Ed Chesney to come forward and describe essentially what was presented to us and kind of give you a status of where we are. We're going to have to spend a lot more than 8 hours sorting this out, so that's why he's here.
And on the front of the cover, it says ACAR, it's the ADAC, but.
Ed Chesney, Marine and Aviation. I looked at the proposal and the proposed locations. Most of them were downtown, Coachman Park, some of the boat ramp, and the problem there is we don't have the depth for something this big. And we have the marina that is downtown is right up to the intercoastal right-of-way. So while the channel is a little bit west of that right-of-way, we can't really encroach into that right-of-way if we were to put this thing downtown. Seminole, it gets even shallower in that area. So looking around for their needs, they were looking for 100+ feet of open seawall, and we just don't have that anywhere in the city. The only seawall in the city that we do own with that kind of footage is along Sand Key. The city owns that seawall all the way from around the bridge to the jetty. And we share that seawall with Pinellas County. They use it for loading and unloading for their reef programs, for beach renourishment. Actually, the county uses it more than we do. We have a small yard there, but the water depths are there, and there would be a possibility with some studying of the area, how we could moor something there. It's outside of the federal channel. It's pretty wide in there. And I talked to Pinellas County. They're aware of the situation. Now they've asked me to go further up the ladder. I went to Water Nav. They told me now to go to Parks and Rec, and then of course we have to go beyond that. So other than that, there are some proposed locations. I don't think any of the ones in the intercoastal work for us. And unless anybody has any other questions about either of the sites, I'll try to answer those.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor.
What is the depth which required for this?
It has a 6.5-foot draft, so we need to have at least that amount of water at all times. Now, if this thing is some way, it'll be fixed if it's a permanent mooring, so we'll have to do some sort of a bulkhead, projection out to get this thing to moor, because I don't think they want it tidally influenced all of the time. So we're looking at water depths of 7 feet and greater at all times.
I mean, the reason that I was interested in it, and I've known the individual that has now got a 501c3. We are the 13th Coast Guard city in the United States. The ADAC has a pretty storied history. I think it would be a great way to continue to show our support for the Coast Guard, and I think it could become an attraction for us. I think out at Sand Key it makes a lot of sense. There'd probably be about, I don't know how many, probably 1,600 rooms looking at it at all times. Unfortunately, there's no place to put it in Coachman Park to draw people to downtown, but there is interest in some of the other cities. I understand that Tarpon and Dunedin are also interested, as is St. Pete, but the gentleman that's kind of spearheading this actually served on the ADAC over in the Middle East and is originally from Clearwater and would like to see it here more than anywhere else. Congressman Bill Arakis and Christ are both in support of bringing it home, but we need to find a home. And for the Coast Guard, it is going to be retired in July, but for that to occur, they have to have a letter of support from some municipality that is willing to house it. So this is more exploratory at this point.
And I agree that Sand Key makes a lot of sense if we can find the right place for it, because.
So really, we're just looking for support to just take the next steps.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing. It's a shame that it can't fit down in Coachman Park. But, if we can get it to Sand Key, that'd be great.
What side of Sand Key? On the east or west side?
It would be
South.
on the south side. Of the south side of the channel. Well, it'd be the north side of the channel, but the south, from Clearwater Beach, it's on the south side.
West of the bridge.
West of the bridge.
West of the bridge. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's 7 feet deep there consistently?
It is deeper in some locations. We'll have to verify that, and it, of course, it gets shallower at the seawall, but we never have any depth problems in that area. So I don't really see any dredging problems, which would be a big impediment to this project, is dredging. I think some of the other communities are gonna have dredging problems as well if they try to put it in the intercoastal.
And at that location, it basically becomes part of the Sand Key Park. I mean, if you're in Sand Key Park, you would have access to, are we allowed, would this be something that people would be allowed to board and observe after, once it's?
That's the intent, yes.
So you would go into Sand Key Park to be able to do this?
And interestingly enough, the city owns 50 feet off of that seawall, so that all along the park, there's 50 feet that the city does own from the bridge to the jetty. So it would have to be a partnership because you'd be on city property to enter the boat, but to get to the boat, you'd have to go through the park.
A lot of people fish off that jetty.
Yeah, it wouldn't affect the jetty, it would be east of the jetty. The seawall ends at the jetty, and the jetty goes out quite a bit further, so it would not bother fishing. We have fishing piers there near the bridge as well.
And would this require a cooperation or a letter of cooperation or a letter of support from the county commission if we're going to be?
Most likely, because you'd be getting access to the seawall from the county.
I believe so, yes.
And it would only be open during those hours.
I'm
They would
very-
also be seeking to build a structure in the park that would actually give all the background of the ADAC. So a mini museum.
I fully support moving this forward. See what we can do.
We have consensus on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chesney. All right, folks, we're at 10:30. I have a feeling 13.2 might take a minute or two. Do you want to take a quick break, or do you want to? Nicole wants to take a break, and that's really all I need to know.
Thank you.
So, why don't we take a quick break before we tackle 13.2?
I'm not going to say no to a break.
what's out of there he doesn't like.
I mean, not to exceed 25,000. I don't know.
For heaven's sakes, you can get oxygen. The wall's been up place. That's just really. Item 13.2.
Authorize the issuance of the waterfront Bluff Properties request for proposals. Mr. Delk.
Mayor, Council, Michael Delk, Assistant City Manager. Want to go through with you our draft request for proposals and cover some points with you. We, as you recall from our one-on-ones, we tried to go over and give you a brief background. Also, late on Friday, I sent out an email hoping to assist you a little bit further in terms of some of the specific questions that we need to make sure we get answered today. Our eye, of course, is on getting this document wrapped up with you, if not this morning, by Thursday evening, and then getting it to our purchasing folks who we're talking to now about getting it formally advertised and out on the street before the end of the year, which we would very much like to do if we are able to work through the document and if you are comfortable and satisfied with where it is. So what I'm going to do, well, I'll follow your lead in terms of if you've got any specific direction, Mayor, on how you want to go through this, but I have a PowerPoint prepared that we can go through and kind of give us a little bit of the refresher on the background, get us up to speed on what we're proposing for the park properties, and then we'll go from there to some specific points that we need to make sure that we cover with you this morning, if that's all right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, the action requested provides feedback to us on the RFP draft, authorize us to make some changes between now and Thursday night, and then hopefully permit us to work with purchasing to get the RFP advertised and on the street before the end of the year. The RFP outline, summary of the offering, background information generally, description of downtown, project goals, which is an area that we pointed out to you. I think these are pretty self-evident, but we want to make sure we need to be in alignment with you on the project goals. Site details, and we'll go through that here in terms of what we're expecting to see or the opportunities that we see in the various parcels. The regulatory framework, really this is more background for any respondents that may have interest in the RFP. Submission requirements, this is very important. We have a very clear and definitive set of what we expect to have in the submission requirements. Those are important to us in order to be able to make a consistent and fair evaluation of whatever proposals that we get. We want them to be relatively consistent in terms of what they provide us for the review. The evaluation criteria, I think we need to pay particular attention to this when we get a little further along. We need to make sure that you all are comfortable with the evaluation criteria and then a selection schedule, which we need to work out. Just to briefly summarize the market studies, we've been doing market studies for this property in one fashion or another, really going all the way back to 2014, more recently in 2016 with the Imagine Clearwater project, and then earlier this year as we prepared for the final phase of development and the RFP process. We've had some real estate analysis for the City Hall site, and there's other studies that have been done by some of the private developers and respondents to the request for expressions of interest from earlier this year. What we basically, to summarize those, the market has a certain level of support for apartments, condos, limited retail. Market tends to be, from what we are told, very weak on hotel and office space. Doesn't mean that we don't want those things, but it may mean that it's going to impact our necessary level of investment in order to make them happen. For that reason, developers may need assistance with regard to increased density and FAR, and this may be as much for bankability as actual development opportunity, frankly. We've allowed some additional height latitude on the site next to the harbor view. We don't want to overwhelm that site, but we're recommending or encouraging a little bit additional flexibility for their consideration. And also, we may, an opportunity for assisting in parking is a good public-private partnership opportunity for us. Some of the minimum requirements, what we're looking for specifically, a minimum 150 rental units across the 3 sites. Ground floor uses in some locations that are open to the general public. This is primarily going to be focused on the Cleveland and Osceola area where we kind of have the central part of our retail corridor. We would look for people to comply with the downtown design guidelines, which really I would just summarize that by saying this isn't an urban environment, it's an urban downtown. That's kind of what we're pursuing to develop, so we want an urban development pattern in the core of our community. And a financial offer in the form of fee simple purchase or ground lease. Basically, how does the business structure of the deal look to a proposer? This is revisiting from our earlier discussion this fall, just to quickly re-summarize the development assumptions for the various parcels. Parcel 1, mixed use, residential over retail. Overnight accommodation is an alternative in this location. Sit-down restaurants, important for our plaza entryway. Mass and scale sensitive to the library and design and height. We don't want to overwhelm the library, but as I mentioned to you earlier, I think we at this stage can allow some more latitude for that design, more than where we started initially a couple of years ago. And then lastly, again, this is a public-private partnership opportunity for parking. The City Hall site, once again, mixed use, potential for residential over parking. Overnight accommodation, an acceptable alternative. Retail is optional. The further we get away from Cleveland, I think, kind of the consensus is a little weaker retail market, given that we don't have a terribly strong retail market to begin with. Cultural components, we're leaving that in the RFP, although the RFP has been adjusted to show or to not discuss the reuse of the City Hall building, since you all have directed that to be investigated for tearing down. But we are leaving it open as a cultural opportunity on that site, unless you have that, want to take that out. Mass and scale here is entirely flexible to market potential. And again, public-private partnership opportunity for parking. The third and final parcel, the CMA Pier Strike site, residential mixed use, overnight accommodation, once again, is an alternative. Mass and scale, flexible to the market. Public-private partnership opportunities for parking at this location. And we do continue to include in the RFP that there is an opportunity for land assembly or swap options with regard to the Pier Street site. The RFP will make it clear, leave it open, that developers can submit proposals for 1, 2, or 3 sites. There is no stated preference specifically for a master developer, although that is not precluded. Listed incentives are available for all sites, and that's an area where I want to make sure that you all are comfortable with how we have those listed in the RFP. And if developers want something that is not listed, they must specifically identify their request, and we have no objections if they wish to ask for any other consideration in terms of their response and how we might negotiate a potential partnership with them. Right now, we're in the process of obtaining additional appraisals for the 3 sites, updating those appraisals. The RFP will request that developers factor in paying fair market value, but if they do not want to, they need to say why and what they will be able to offer for the properties. Once a proposal is selected for negotiation, appraisals will be updated based on the proposed land use mix, and if it is a sale or lease. Council can choose to sell property for less than a fair market value, but that requires approval in a referendum. Some of our incentives, council will strongly consider supporting additional density in the FAR on each site. The city's planning and development department is currently commencing work on some comprehensive plan updates that will include actually these changes in density and intensity. Obviously, ultimately, that is subject to your approval and adoption by ordinance. So that is in process. CR funding, the CRA has determined that they can offer between $2.5 and $5 million total over 4 years for rental housing and other public amenities. The parking fund is available for up to $25,000 per space for up to 100 spaces, or $2.5 million for public use. The developer would propose an operations plan for managing the parking that is consistent with how we've approached some public-private partnerships for parking in the past. The city support for streetscape improvements and permit and impact fees, general fund and enterprise funds. We have offered incentives for streetscape in the past. This is a good opportunity for us to, for a partnership opportunity. Incentives, next page, up to 5 bonus points awarded for each category. Cultural amenities available to the public, including performance spaces, galleries, movie theaters, museums, art center, etc. This is to encourage the consideration of possible civic component to our park. Building out portions of the park that are not currently included, for example, the South Bluff Walk. There may be some other add-backs that we've discussed a little bit that would be an opportunity as well. To meet WELL or LEED Silver certification standards or other green building standards. Again, an opportunity for incentive. In the selection process, and providing more than 200 rental units across the 3 sites to try to encourage the development of as many rooftops downtown as possible. Lastly, we are suggesting things for various reasons, limited market or economic impact that we recommend not providing subsidies for. Those include hotels, parking that is not required by zoning. So this is if somebody has a minimum parking requirement of 1.5 spaces per unit, for example, we would not subsidize going from 1.5 to 2 spaces per unit. So that's what that means. Hotels, we may want to talk about that a little bit further if you all want to be more demonstrative in terms of incentivizing those who may have a hotel as part of their concept. Office uses and market rate condos. What I would say about office is that along the 3 Bluff properties, office really is antithetical to our whole purpose for this project, which is really more of a 24/7 activation. So much prefer hotels, residential use, that sort of thing, right along the Bluff properties rather than office, which typically and to a large extent goes dark at 5 or 6 o'clock and then doesn't have any inherent activity for the most part through the evening till the next day. So that is our recommendation with that. Evaluation scoring. Once an applicant meets the minimum requirements, the proposal will be scored. This is a 2-step process as we're proposing or suggesting it. Step 1, non-financial criteria, which includes eligible bonus points. Applicant must receive a minimum of 75 points out of 120 points to move to Step 2. Step 2 is scoring for financial criteria, financial feasibility, and financial offer to the city for a maximum of 100 points. The staff selection committee will review and score all proposals. HR&A will assist in reviewing the proposals, paying special attention to the financial feasibility portion of the project. And then we have a scoring criteria that we will want to focus on with you clearly to make sure that you're comfortable with how we approach the scoring. At that point, staff will recommend developers to present to City Council a short list of those who proposed or responded, and recommend developers for council to begin negotiations. Based on council direction, we'll negotiate with approved developers and prepare a term sheet and development agreement. And then ultimately, you would adopt the development agreement contingent upon referendum results. Timeline, there are 2 timelines to consider: the RFP issuance and time to create a development agreement, the time to place a referendum question on the ballot. The timeline of the referendum is important with impacts on the ability to attract developer interest, public's ability to understand and support a development agreement. In other words, get that communication out there to the public in terms of what the development partnership looks like. Council and staff time to make decisions and recommendations regarding the proposal. And also there's various economic factors, including where we are with the COVID-19 pandemic and those kinds of issues that have impacted so greatly what we do. And then, of course, the impact on the City Council election in March 2022 and the ability of future councils to maintain a previously approved development agreement. And I will actually defer to Pam on this timeline, and if you want to cover this now, Pam, on the RFP process and the referendum election timeframe.
So the timeline that we have presented is variable. It has the amount of time it takes. It does not presume specific dates. The timeline for the RFP process is 7 months. The timeline for the referendum process is an additional 5 months. Once the RFP is issued, we've allowed 90 days for the response period, another 2 months for evaluation and selection, and that includes getting it to council for confirmation. And then the a negotiation period of 2 months. All of those, both of those timeframes are very compressed and do not allow any slide time. So it would require council to react very quickly. And then the additional, and then we'll walk through the additional 5 months, which is the referendum time period. Once you have determined what questions you need to have asked, meaning who is your deal with and what is it there, what variances do they need from the charter requirements. We draft the questions. We've allowed 6 to 8 weeks for that. The length of time is dependent. If a resolution is needed, you only have to have 1 hearing. If an ordinance is needed, meaning that you're actually going to change the charter provisions, then you need 2 hearings before adoption. There's 1 week period for translation, and then 90 days before the election, we must get it to the supervisor of elections. And then you have the election. So that period by itself is a 5-month period from when you start to when you may have the election.
I thought the RFP was being issued on January 11th, and the responses are due by March 5th.
Then Michael has shortened that time period to 60 days. I was not aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been talking with purchasing the last week, so we really need to immediately get it to the formal notice. And once we do that, we can't have direct conversations with the respondents. So what I've been talking with them about is our ability to get it advertised and get it on the street formally before the end of the calendar year. So that's an opportunity that's doable for us if you are comfortable with it and if we can wrap it up on Thursday. So that's purely up to you. But what we will not be able to do is have it out on the street, publicly accessible through because of our purchasing rules. That's fine. We'll get it issued sooner rather than later if you are comfortable with the RFP. So
the less than 60 days just seems too short to me. So
well, for respondents,
yes,
yeah, we can make that 90 days. I think we've been 90 days with no shorter than 60 days. So I don't disagree with you. I think 90 days is not excessively long for a project proposal that's this involved and detailed potentially. So I'm completely comfortable with that. I don't think it'll negatively impact us at all.
So that would push it to April 11th for the response day, which basically keeps our time frame intact, at least for the recommendation we were making for the referendum for March of 2022, if that's the direction you guys want to go.
Well, why don't you go ahead and finish the presentation,
All right.
and then we can start
Well, I think we're just about
barraging you
there.
with questions.
Community engagement timeline, marketing the RFP, kind of 2 tracks here, marketing campaign to advertise the RFP. We also want to make sure that we inform the public about the upcoming need for the referendum. Crafting the development deal, test the referendum questions in focus groups with surveys, and again, continue informing the public about process and terms of the development agreement. And then publicizing the referendum, provide private organization the information needed to assist in promoting the referendum, and continue the public information regarding the referendum process. What our recommendation to you is at this point is to prepare for a referendum in March of 2022, which allows council time for negotiations, public time to understand the proposed project and its terms, and as a reasonable amount of time for a developer to wait for an answer. We don't want to draw it out too long if we're going to proceed with the RFP in the near future. These are alternatives, is to try to achieve a referendum in November of 2021. We think that process is constrained too much and doesn't really afford us the time for either proposals or successful evaluations or preparing for the referendum. August of 2022 would mean that the old council creates terms immediately before a new council is elected. We see problems with that as being undesirable, maybe not workable, but not the best of situations.
Mike, I need to stop you there.
Okay.
Because August of 2022, our next city election is March of 2022. So
Yeah.
that would
Yes.
be right after a new council is sat. It wouldn't mean an old council creates terms immediately before a new council. The next election after March of 22 isn't until March of 24.
I think it's the establishment of the referendum question.
Right, he's saying that
Not have
this body here would approve everything, choose the developer and everything else. You'd have the March election. We'd have to have all the ground set for the August 2022.
Okay.
I mean, I have somewhat of an issue with it being March of 2022 because this wasn't where I was going to make these comments, but as long as you've opened the door, I'm going to. This is going to be a difficult process. Referendums in the city of Clearwater, and most cities, are difficult, period. So I think it's really important that we try to get consensus on the process so that every step of the way, my hope is that at the end of this process, we will have a unanimous vote to go forward with to the citizens of Clearwater. And so it's important before we go through the front door to figure out how we can potentially get to a unanimous decision. If that's the case, regardless of what happens in March of 2022, you will still have a majority that agree with the end result. One of the things that concerns me about a March election, I'm just going to be very frank about it, is it doesn't matter what we come up with on these three parcels, there will be people that oppose it. I mean, that's just, you can't get consensus with a city of our size on anything. And I kid about it, but I mean, you literally couldn't get consensus on world peace. So there will be people that will vote against it for one reason or another, and I understand that. But I think it'll be extraordinarily important that we have a unanimous decision, and that the March election isn't just built around whether you're for or against what's going to happen on these three parcels, because as we all know, there's a lot more to being a sitting city council member than just this issue. But it's going to be a big one, and so, you know, that's one of the reasons I'd really rather go to August. But, you know, some of the developers may not want to wait that long, we may not want to wait that long, but I expressed this to Pam and to Michael, and I'm just going to be transparent about it. I think it is an issue that we could face, so.
Can I?
Yes.
A comment about your August, so you prefer it would go to August? I mean, that's a primary, right? I mean,
It's a primary.
We would have it in November.
No, it would be a primary. You're going to have Democratic primaries, Republican primaries. You're going to have county commission races
Right.
for primaries.
Right.
You'll have state legislative races, and you'll have federal congressional primaries as well.
But
So
we
I
get
think
better turnout at the general election.
we do, but you will get better turnout at the August election than you will at the March city alone election.
March election.
But if we go to November 2022, that's what I'm thinking might be. Oh,
Ms.
Just to
Call.
keep in mind, Mayor and council members, that I also have to ask the supervisor of elections for their support of handling one of our elections during the primary, which in the past has not been supported. So we typically try to schedule our referendum questions either March or November because we know that there has been expressed support for that.
So has the supervisor said she does not want to support in August 2022?
It makes it very difficult for them to support our election during a primary because they're focusing also as well with St. Pete. St. Pete usually has a primary during that time frame.
So then
And so we'll be dead last on the November 2022.
Even on the, well, primaries.
All of them, but
all of
there's
them. They're
a lot
always
of,
on the dead
there's a
last.
lot of ballot drop is kind of my point.
But I can approach if you wish me to approach the supervisor.
Well, I don't know that we need to decide this today, but
But
it's
that's
something to
something to keep in mind.
discuss. Vice Mayor?
You will need to decide before we release the RFP because it may affect your timing of releasing the RFP.
If we settle on August of 2022, then our recommendation would be to you to not release until March, April timeframe this spring. So,
And if you go to November, we would recommend you push it off slightly longer than that.
Mm-hmm. Vice Mayor?
You know, during our one-on-ones that we had, I mean, I've kind of waited since then, what's the best date, and I'm still going back to March. I mean, and I agree with the mayor said, we're gonna have to really get a consensus on this. I mean, we kind of went through the same thing this time with Imagine Clearwater not getting off last year, then we come in with a new council. I mean, we had and you even told me, you said, we're gonna have to push it off because we don't know if you're gonna have the same vote, even though we were unanimous. I know it's gonna be probably an issue, an election issue, and as the mayor said, you're gonna have people that are against it, but I think if we really wanna move this thing forward, I think March is the best time to do it.
well, I think I can't help myself. I'm optimistic. I think that we will have some very good, I'm confident that we can have some good proposals. These are beautiful properties. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to really engage our neighborhood coalition and get community support, because I think we can show some rather spectacular finishing touches to activate the park. So I'm looking forward to that being a pretty nice message. And hopefully we can get the input and the support from the coalition and some of these folks who can help us with the heavy lifting necessary in the community to get a successful referendum. So we want to engage them early and often and really have them fully understand what we're trying to do to activate the bluff and the park. And I'm hopeful that there are folks out there who want to support us. Although, as the mayor said, we certainly can't assume that anything will be 100% agreed upon. That just never happens. So,
Councilmember Hamilton?
Well, I know, when I got elected in 2014, I had every belief in my body that we wouldn't be talking about this today. We would already be beyond this point. So, but I think the more I've thought about it, I'm comfortable with the March of 22 because especially if we as a body have unanimous support for the RFP we're going to bring forward to the public, then I don't see that can easily be derailed as a campaign issue. Because bottom line, you don't want to support the referendum, so you're saying you don't want to support what our council has already done, already approved unanimously. So you're okay with just everything staying stagnant and doing nothing. And I think it's a defusable situation. And I mean, we've been kicking this can too damn long. And I'm willing to, I agree with the 90-day, even possibly 120 days of the RFP being out there before it has to come back, but and compressing somewhere else in the timeline. But I think we're better off having this going forward in the March 22 election. That's-
Go ahead and finish, and then we can, all right.
That's it?
Yeah, yes.
All right, who wants, I mean, I'm sure everybody has questions and comments that are pretty significant, so.
Well, as Mike alluded to, from my standpoint, talk about hotels and not offering any incentive for a hotel. Well, I think most successful downtowns have lodging opportunities. The only hotel in our downtown isn't truly a hotel because nobody up here can walk in and make a reservation. So,
Well, we have the residents.
we have the Residence Inn, but to have one in our core downtown, I don't see that as a negative, and I don't want to take that opportunity and that option away from the development community by saying, well, I don't want to build a hotel because there's no incentives involved with if I bring a hotel proposal forward. So I think we need to be a little more flexible about hotels in general as part of this development, hotel lodging units, than just saying they're not eligible for any incentive at all.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, and again, this is something that I've thought about, and even in our one-on-ones, that was one of the issues I had. Okay, so we've had a study that says, a hotel right now downtown doesn't make sense. I understand that, it doesn't. But we're talking about a finished, completed, Imagine Clearwater Park with an active edge that's going to completely shift the activity. And a hotel, I'm thinking in the future, a hotel is a great spot to have there. Right on the bluff, could be a boutique hotel, a music hotel would go good with what we're planning on doing in the park. Could have restaurants, some public parking. I'd rather incentivize that than say, hey, we're going to exclude that, any kind of incentives on it, because that's the kind of vision I see that would go well there.
Well, I get a little uncomfortable when we become too prescriptive. I really think that the development community does their homework, studies what they believe is going to be most productive and most profitable. And I really think that the market should determine what they think ought to go on these properties. And then ultimately, we have scoring criteria that we're going to decide how that marries up to what we desire in downtown. But, I'm a little bit cautious about getting too prescriptive.
This is an easy change to make if you all have consensus this morning.
Anything else on the hotel use? Why don't we kind of close that discussion down? Councilmember Beckman?
I'm okay with hotel use being there. I would certainly want to know a lot more about what incentivizing a hotel would look like as far as if it's guaranteeing, rooms are occupied. Are we subsidizing that and paying for rooms that nobody is in? Is that what that means? And so I'd want to understand, what that means, but certainly want to encourage people to consider a hotel.
You won't know what it means until the developer proposes their
What
request.
he or she wants, what the developer
Right.
wants. Okay.
You don't know what they're gonna ask for in terms of an incentive until they ask.
Well, they can ask for the world, right? They can ask for anything.
You're not obligated to give it.
No, absolutely
Right.
not, but you
I mean,
can ask.
guaranteeing rooms would be a non-starter for me.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can put our homeless in there if we're paying for them.
Any other comments on the hotels?
I'm fine with hotels. I was worried a little bit about the timeline. Councilmember Hamilton had talked about maybe expanding the time for, the proposals to come in. But there isn't a lot, it doesn't seem like there's any time at all to crunch the later stages. I'm a little worried that we don't have enough time to get a number of proposals back. But, you know, I think the proposed timeline is probably the best one we have.
Councilmember Beckman?
Or so are we switching to a little bit of a timeline discussion?
Yeah,
So-
this is a tough agenda item to
It
go
is,
through.
to
And normally
navigate.
I don't go first, so you know what I'm gonna do? I am gonna run through some of the comments I have, and then if anybody wants to piggyback off them, great. And if there's something that I've missed, which I'm sure I will, then we can come back and discuss that. Michael, I might have missed it, but I didn't see anything in the document that was touting the fact that these properties are on a natural bluff that takes them out of the floodplain, which to me is a really positive attribute. It's not something Tampa or St. Pete could advertise, but it's an enormous thing when you talk to companies and, you know, developers about. So that's just something I thought was missing that ought to be included. There was a statement about the trend of working at home. And it stated that it's, you know, that this is a trend that is here to stay. That's kind of an editorial comment. I think time will tell whether that's truly the case. We've seen some productivity losses from people that are working at home. On page 17, one of the things, it talks about the Harborview site. I certainly would like to see restaurants that avail themselves of the western exposure.
Say that again for me, please, Mayor?
In the overall considerations on page 17, it talks about the Harborview site. City CRA have identified ground floor retail as a requirement to the Harborview site, although ground floor retail is not a specific requirement for the City Hall and the Pierce Street sites. Active ground floors are encouraged. I would like to encourage restaurants that are looking out across the park, west. And I know you may want them on the, you know, the entryway into the park, but I would hope that we're gonna have some al fresco dining that's going to be looking west.
Oh, absolutely.
That's something I've
From a
always-
design standpoint.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
And you're pursuing the floor area ratios, which I think that's a big deal. I did not see anything in here that would potentially allow for the CMA site and the City Hall site to be united by relocating Pierce to the south. And I don't know how anybody else feels, but I think that we could probably relocate Pierce to the south and still give Pierce 100 access, and you could unite the City Hall site and the CMA site, and that should be something that the developers at least understand. So I got two hands, Vice Mayor and then
Okay.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Well, my only concern with that is how you're treating the land. Would that be, and I think I've asked this of Pam before, and I can't remember if I got because on the north side of Pierce, the City Hall site now, will probably be a leased property because you probably will not get a referendum to sell that. And if it's leased, it'll be hard to do a condo because it would have to be a land lease condo. I don't know if that'd be feasible in a developer. On the south side of Pierce, the CMA property, that could be sold. It's not included in the referendum for the bluff. So I don't know, what happens when you combine those? You still have that land separation there, or does everything come inside the, on the bluff referendum that would have to affect that?
I don't think it would necessarily pull the Pierce Street property into the referendum, but I would take the referendum to completing the entire street. So it would be the street and the City Hall site.
Okay, combined.
Yeah,
Well,
it may not be of any interest to developers, but at least if they know that the potential exists, I think that's worthwhile.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Let them, because they're gonna come to us with the ideas, and then we'll have a chance to review it and see if that's feasible. But kind of number one in my mind, because I've been here, and I've seen, as the mayor has, how referendums seem to fail. My thoughts are, how are we gonna reach a successful referendum? And I see some things that I see would be pushing into an unsuccessful referendum, but, you know, we could always look at it later, give the option to have that happen. I'm fine with that. And then, you know, we look at it later and go, well, this is either something we'll accept or not.
I think the objective was to open up all possibilities and then let you guys determine what you thought would be successful and what you wanted to move forward with. I don't think our goal was to create limitations, but there are some limitations that exist in terms of referendum.
Well, by offering it up, as you're saying, it really opens everything up, so might as well say that could be a possibility and see what happens.
I mean, you could get 3 different developers and that wouldn't be possible, but I don't know if people know that that has potential. Councilmember Hamilton?
Well, and as y'all talk about Pierce Street, I've always said, you know, rather than moving all that infrastructure and everything else, you know, you allow for development of the air rights above Pierce Street. Pierce remains where it is, but if you incorporate both properties together, you can build over Pierce Street as long as vehicular traffic and trucks can get down to the front, you know, still traverse Pierce Street. You can build right across the road, and you know, that would be a way to do a larger development of the parcel using those air rights and whatnot. So, like I said, I don't want to take anything off the table. I want the development community to come forward and say, you know, just kind of give them a blank canvas and say, here, what would you do? What do you propose?
We can answer this question if you all have a consensus for including the possible relocation or abandonment of Pierce. I mean, that will solve this question, and we can incorporate that into the RFP. So it would be that simple if there is a consensus among you.
Pam?
So you can't represent that you would do it because it would require a legislative action of the council. You can say that you would consider it. I don't know if you have enough information about the infrastructure now to know what the cost of that would be. So I think you could open up possibilities, but you can't really say we would do that.
Right. Is there any interest in that?
Yes.
Do you want it phrased as air rights or potential vacating? You want to suggest both possibilities?
I'd like both. Councilmember Beckman?
I'm okay with, you know, whatever developers want to come forward with. I mean, fewer restrictions are probably, I mean, as far as this part, I have some more things that I'd like a little more narrow, but this one's not a big deal.
Okay. Scoring. So the category breakdowns, I mean, there's, you know, 120 points for non-financial criteria, 50 for project understanding and concept and organization, expertise and experience. First of all, who's going to be on the selection committee? And those are really big point totals in relation to everything else, without a little bit more detail of how you're going to differentiate between different applicants. I'm going to throw a couple questions at you all at once. And are you planning on only bringing back a single finalist, or are you going to bring back your top 2 finalists for each parcel?
Well, we've been discussing that. I think right now, kind of what our tendency would be, with regard to the first question, who would we have staff-wise internally reviewing it? That would probably be the departments that have some extensive familiarity with the project and our objectives. So it might be someone from Planning and Development, Parks and Rec, Engineering, the CRA. Probably, we may have somebody from the City Attorney's Office assist us in that regard too, an Assistant City Attorney or Pam. So that's kind of how I would see the makeup. It would be a core group of folks who have some extensive familiarity with the park project and its objectives. With regard to the shortlisting, you certainly will be aware of all of them. We can summarize them in a summary sheet as to who responded. What we would anticipate is to try to narrow it down to 3 top selections of one form or another, and then have those set up to make a presentation formally to you. So that's kind of where we were thinking. But clearly, this is one of those things that's important for us to work out with you here this morning. Ideally, particularly if we're going to try to get it out by the end of the year. But that's kind of the approach that we were considering.
But you weren't going to bring back one finalist for each parcel. That's what I was.
No, I think the reality is that we'll have to look at that in terms of how we get responses. I mean, we have intentionally left it wide open. Somebody could propose handling all 3 sites. We could have 3 separate individuals. We could have a mix of 2 or more. There may be some things that we really like about one proposal and not so much the others, and vice versa. So where will we end up? I'm not sure. I think it's impossible to predict that. There again, as you suggested earlier, we're not being overly prescriptive in terms of how somebody responds. But I think that's, on the back end, that's a little bit challenging in trying to evaluate and review these things. And clearly there's going to be a need to have a conversation with you through that process. So, but our focus would try to be to narrow it down to 3 and then have a formal presentation to you all.
That's great, as long as there's more than one, because empirically somebody may come out on top. But I think as elected officials, we also have to have the pulse of the community to some extent and understand what we think can also pass referendum. Because without doing that, we're going to fail.
Yeah, I would be hopeful that we would find some extraordinary creative concepts in one or more of these, and that alone may facilitate that we want you to see some components of these presentations that hit on all cylinders, even if 100% of every proposal is not necessarily, that has to be negotiated, right? I mean, that's part of the process. So, it'll be driven by the quality and the thoroughness of our respondents.
Ms. Aiken?
Just for clarity, Michael, you don't mean just 3 proposals. Do you mean 3 for each site? Or are you saying 3 proposals, even if that results in 1 per site?
My thinking was the top 3 proposals.
Okay.
But it will depend on how we get responses back.
So council, I think you probably need to give us some direction here. So say we get 3 master developer proposals, and then we get 3 individual proposals for each site. Or maybe 3 for each site and 2 that want site 1 and site 2. So, we don't know because we've left it.
You could have any permutation.
Any permutation. So, Michael, so that I understand what you're actually saying and so that council does too, do you mean just top 3?
I think in concept, that's correct. I don't actually think that is a completely determinable question this morning because we're going to afford broad flexibility and latitude on how they submit. So my intention is to give you a kind of an inclination or a direction that we're thinking. But if we get 4 world-class architects that show up and make 4 proposals, then frankly, I'd probably want to have you see all of them. So I don't think it's not a 3 and done, but that would be our inclination, is to bring you multiple proposals, the top 3, if it ends up falling out that way, and if frankly there's proposals that we feel you need to see, if it's a 4th or a 5th, then my intention would be to show it to you. So, and we'll be having probably some one-on-ones along the way to kind of keep you all informed as to where the process is.
I just want to see more than one.
For
Okay?
each property.
For each property.
Yeah.
That's my main point. Vice Mayor?
Under your category breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
I know that Councilman Beckman would like this, but I do too. Under this meat, green, and wellness certification standards, you give 5 points. Could we bump that to 10? Because I think that's going to be very important to have something a little more than all these other bonus points. We could make it 125, or I'm sorry, 25-point maximum.
Well, can I jump in there?
Sure.
Piggyback off that? I
Councilmember
think-
Beckman.
Thank you. I
Still
think-
trying to announce everybody.
Okay.
We're not on video yet, right? Okay.
Okay. I think it needs to be a requirement. This is our property. These are buildings and structures and developments that are going to be here for years and years. We need to make LEED standards or LEED, like level standards or whatever we can do to have sustainability a requirement. The 5 bonus points is like, but I want, I think with our referendum related to the landings, one of the components of a 2-to-1 margin is that people care about the environment. And going forward, all sorts of studies report that people, tourists, care about the environment and what you're doing for sustainability. And I think we should make these a requirement of submission, this kind of sustainable building and development.
And that begs the question, though, at what level?
Right. I don't know enough about that for putting it in a proposal to developers.
Because if it's platinum
Comment.
level, for
Well,
instance.
it
then-
doesn't- yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just being devil's
Yeah.
advocate. I'm not disagreeing that we ought to put it in. I just want to figure out what level is going to be acceptable.
Well, doing it as a bonus point, and it's showing that we care about that more than the other bonus points, to me, that's an incentive. And most developers, I don't know, I think nowadays, everybody tries to do that. When I was a contractor, I know we all tried to meet, maybe not certified levels, but we all tried to strive for the green, sustainability and so forth.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we have consensus this morning, we can take a look at adjusting this criteria to make sure that it's understood that environmental sustainable initiatives in our proposals is important to us and try to elevate that. I too believe that that's an advantage and an asset to us. Frankly, we're already hearing from some of the folks who would like to reuse materials from the city hall in a proposal as a materials recovery for the building that you would like to have us tear down. So I think those are the kind of initiatives that it's good to have on the table. Those are opportunities. Doesn't mean we won't go ahead and tear it down and haul it out of the city, but I mean there's a creative number of ways that people can respond to those issues, and that's just one of them. So we can, between now and Thursday, we can kind of tweak this and emphasize that more if there's a consensus for you to do so. We'd have no problem with that at all.
Councilmember Beckman.
Thank you. So I feel like we need to put on the brakes. I understand, we have not yet, first of all, we haven't yet decided about demolishing a city hall, right? So that's potential. You had asked about the cost of demolishing, and I had asked about the cost of maintaining it and insurance and heating and cooling or whatever while it sits there empty. But, we're talking as if we're going to put this out by the end of the year, and I know that's your recommendation, but in order, you also, made a statement about, having, engage in support from the neighborhoods. And I think by us discussing this on a Monday and then finalizing some direction to submit those RFPs out there by the end of the year, that's like whiplash. And I do know that we've been talking about it for years, or you all have been talking about it for years, but if we want buy-in from residents, I think we need to, this is great to get a discussion about the whole process and the timelines and getting it on the ballot and reviewing RFPs and all that, negotiating. But I would push for a November of 2022 and give us a little time. And part of our discussions, I don't know if it was with you or Pam, was that, we need to be respectful of the developers, that once we put an RFP out, we're not gonna say, oh, well, we'll put it on the ballot whenever it feels right. I mean, they are making proposals with costs and they want some kind of a turnaround, and that's expected. And I would respect that, but I just, to be thinking about these things and, for example, advocating for, environmental and sustainable standards in the requirements, maybe people want to weigh in on that, but, you're asking for a decision and action by Thursday. And I have a couple of questions, like on the bottom of this slide on incentives, providing more than 200 rental units across the 3 sites. Does that mean if we have one developer who says, I'll put 200 units on the old City Hall site or the Harborview site, rentals or hotel or whatever, does that mean the other 2 developers don't have to have any? Because it says across the 3 sites. Do you have to have development on, rentals or some kind of housing, rental units across each one of them? Because I don't know how to read that. Or is it, in totality, you gotta have at least?
Well, there is an assumption that details will be handled through a development agreement process that serves the public interest, so we don't try to nail down every single component of it, admittedly. But I think what that means is that we would take as many residential units down here as somebody would be willing and able to build. The question may be for us, how much is due to limited market, how much is the public willing to pay to get them to build it or contribute to it through incentives? I think where that number comes from, frankly, is probably because the market. We don't know that we can absorb, for example, 300 or 400 units along the bluff. If we had 2 different developers doing that, they'd probably be cannibalizing each other a little bit in terms of the market right now. May not be that way in the future, but right now it's a little bit tougher sell. So, we've expressed a willingness to jump in a little bit deeper in incentives if we get a few more units. But to answer your question, the details about that would be dependent upon how it was proposed to us and where the location maybe would be and how those units are configured. And it'll just be subject to negotiation and on the back end.
Is there any desire for some kind of a civic center at all on any of those, convention center, anything like that?
I don't believe we think there would be sufficient room on any of those properties to do a meaningful convention center kind of facility.
Okay.
Councilmember Beckman, I think Councilmember Hamilton wanted to weigh in on the.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Well, and along with the point you were making for public input, public input of the residents, I think we all want it. We all want that, but at the point we're at today, I don't think I need to go to the neighborhoods and say, are you, okay with us putting out an RFP for these properties? Because I think a very small majority of the people, in a very small number of the people in Clearwater today would look at you and say, we don't need to do anything with that property. I don't think the public input portion and the public educating the public and getting feedback from them comes once we put out the RFP. Then we can go out and say, okay, this is what we've put out, this is what we're waiting to get back, and engaging the public from that point. I don't think we need to be engaging them to put the RFP out there because, like I said, I think there's very few people that would say, we don't need to do anything with those properties. So I agree with the public engagement and making sure the public is informed, but not for us, we can make this step, we can take this step without that, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I would piggyback on that and say that, you know, if we're not gonna be prescriptive up here, then I don't know that we should have, you know, different sectors of the public be prescriptive either. I think as Pam said, we're not committed to anything. We can reject anything that comes to us. If there's specific incentives that we aren't palatable, you know, we just don't do it. I hope we'll get 3 proposals that we feel really comfortable bringing to the public to continue to activate downtown and make downtown more self-sufficient, which is one of the main things I want to do. I want to help pay for Imagine Clearwater. I want to put more humans down here that are going to activate Cleveland Street and Osceola, and I want downtown to be more self-sufficient. That to me are the reasons to do this. So, back to you.
I want those things as well, but I also look at, you know, this PowerPoint slide 23 where when we're talking about the November 22nd or 2022 date, that it could be a positive delay if market conditions improve, resulting in less public subsidy. And, you know, I'm a little concerned about cutting $25 million from Imagine Clearwaters, and a lot of those effects will be felt on the park section, you know, the amenities, you know, as far as shade and seating areas and splash pad and size of the playground and all those things that residents hopefully will be taking advantage of every single day. And now we're going to talk about, you know, if we're pushing this through, we may have to incentivize more. The second bullet, the bullet underneath that also says park construction will be well underway, which will increase developer confidence. And so maybe we get a larger number of submissions, you know, once they see the park is up and going. But, you know, I guess in the end, we're only talking about a number of months to, rather than submitting this by the end of the week or next week, waiting a couple of months or so for that November 2022.
Well, I was more inclined to do August. I think I can change my mind and go with March. I will tell you there is a concern that I have overall for Coachman and for the Bluff. And we experienced it out on the beach. It's a little bit different in downtown. But Beach Walk was a painful project. I mean, it really was back in the day. And there were a lot of people that were adamantly opposed to it. I think it was a good thing in the long run. I think it's been a tremendous catalyst. And then we had a lot of the different hotel sites being built upon. One of the things I'd like to get through as quickly as possible is the constant dust flying. You know, for the residents who do live down here at Pierce 100 and at Station Square and Water's Edge and other things. So I think the tighter we can pack that so that we're not constantly, you know, under construction is beneficial. We lost European tourists during Beach Walk because they literally, the travel salespeople would potentially have to rebate European tourists if there was a lot of construction going on. That's part of their warranty process over in Europe because the construction was so disruptive. Councilmember Bunker? Did I see your hand?
You did see my hand.
Okay.
So I like the March date. I think when Councilmember Beckman and I joined the council, very early on we were hit with the landings, and we had like 2 or 3 days notice before we were talking about it here. And then there was only like 3 months before the public voted on it. At least here, they're going to have more than a year to be looking at, no?
The 3 months before the public voted on it, it actually takes 5 months to get to that vote. So there was more time between your deciding to move forward and the public vote.
Oh, okay. Well, at any rate, there's more time for us to reach out to the public in this case and talk about this. And I also would agree with Councilmember Beckman that sustainability is important, and we should beef that up in the RFP.
Okay. Other questions and comments? Mr. Horn?
I just have one comment, and it comes as a result of how long I've been here and where the city has been criticized. On the one hand, we want to try and encourage the market to do something. On the other hand, we get criticized for actually wanting to act like the market, or, you know, trying to replicate the market in some way. Seems to me fundamentally to what we're talking about this morning really revolves around the market, you know, how we think the market is going to respond. So as a result of that, it seems to me it will be very challenging for us, going back to something that you all had talked about, of being so prescriptive, you know, that you end up impacting the market in a way that you never really intended to do so. And I think we do have time to make changes once we see, once we hear how the market is reacting. I mean, we've never really, you know, tried to show that kind of flexibility. We've always gone in with a pretty definite perspective on what we want. And we're trying to do that to a certain extent. But I think we're kind of going back and forth. You know, we want flexibility, you know, we don't want to be so prescriptive. But on the other hand, we've got some other considerations, especially related to a timeline, that we want to respect as well. And I really think this is council in a leading position, making some pretty decisive decisions. And we're doing it in such an open way that the public clearly gets informed as to what we're doing. So I guess I don't see as much consultation on the public engagement side of it as you're trying to craft a framework here that really tries to deal with some of these variables. And that my uncomfortableness is centered around how broadly you may try to get people to agree with you, as opposed to, you know, taking into account all the different, you know, variables that you've identified that you need to react to, and then just making a series of decisions and go with it. That's just kind of what I'm thinking right now.
Thank you. So other comments or questions?
So have we decided, I mean, to recommend a March 22? Is that, are you going to call for, I mean, we're going to discuss this Thursday, or?
Well, we're going to discuss this Thursday again anyway. We can't take a vote here today.
No, I know.
And I think there are some things that we've given staff to react to. And so we'll give them a couple days and then come back. I think at least now, you know, as always, we can only have discussions amongst ourselves up here. So now I think everybody's heard from one another about, you know, sensitivities and opinions and whatnot. And so that will kind of guide us on Thursday so that we can hopefully have a finished product.
I'm sorry?
Councilmember Beckman?
Would we give bonus points to a developer who wants to take on more than one site? I didn't see that listed as a bonus point. I mean, would that probably make our job easier?
Well, I think there's an opportunity for them to get bonus points through the process generally. So,
okay.
I mean, we can try to, you know, if you feel that inherently one developer on multiple sites is better than what other alternatives we might get, then I guess we can, you know, adjust for that specific incentive. But, you know, we may I'll defer to you on that. I don't know that I would recommend that to you, but I'll defer to you all if you rather encourage the master developer approach. Right now, our proposal to you is to leave it open.
And is this marketed like nationally? I mean,
We're going to try to get it about every corner we can get it in. That's right. I think this is an opportunity of national scope to have 3 bluff properties along the harbor in Florida available at one time is a pretty extraordinary opportunity.
and then if we put it out by the end of this month, that negates a November 2022 referendum question?
It doesn't negate it, but we believe that it pushes it off further than would be suitable for the development community. The longer the time frame, the more uncertainty. And frankly, probably one of the biggest things that is an obstacle for us is uncertainty. So we would much rather, we would highly recommend a more definitive and time frame to get to the referendum point. Pam?
What we are planning is putting the time frame in the referendum, and then we're planning on complying with it. So if we say we're going to have a March 2022 election, then we should have a March 2022 election so that it is predictable for the developers and the community. If you want to go to November of 2022, and you guys agree to do that, then we would adjust that and probably adjust the issuance out several months as well.
Yes.
But the timeframes that we're identifying, we really urge you to be prepared to comply with them, because I think it will affect the development community if we do.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just, wanted to bring up one thing. As Bill said, we don't want to legislate the marketplace. But at the same time, on the other hand, the developer, when we be as specific as we can, but leaving it open, his risk is knowing the marketplace and knowing the time. I've seen, in the past, Clearwater has come up with some great ideas, but by the time they get implemented out on the market, we're in a slump, and then nobody wants to do anything. You have, the market does this. It has highs and lows, and right now we're looking pretty good, but, the middle of next year, we don't know what's going to happen. And really, that will affect, and those are things we can't see. So you need to get this, I've always thought that if you got a good idea, get it out there while it gets good, and then, because you don't want to miss that wave. You don't want to get it out when the slump happens. You want to get it on the top of the wave. So I guess we just see what happens.
That happened with the marina in downtown. It got approved in '06 when there weren't enough boat slips and people were paying outrageous amounts of money per lineal foot for boats, and then we cut the ribbon in 2009 in the middle of the Great Recession, and the situation was vastly different. It's doing well now, but it's different. Councilmember Beckman.
My note says, I just see, I think if we have it on a March 2022 referendum with 2 council seats up, I think it could be a tough election. And then, and to your point, I was thinking of when you were speaking to it, it just seems with so much unknown, I'm just a little more cautious with money and decisions, and just worry about incentivizing and paying out large amounts to developers if there could be more positive things if we waited a little bit. But you don't know. You don't know. It's market, right? And we don't know what we don't know. I want to be very respectful of the developers that come in. But the bottom line is, if you put out this RFP by the end of December and we don't like what we have, we're not obligated to move forward with any of them, correct?
Correct.
Or you might move forward with two of them and leave one for down the road. I mean, theoretically, we should be in an upturn because by March, if the vaccine is effective, which I think everyone believes it will be, and by then it will be broadly distributed to those people who want to have it, you should see an economic upturn at that point. So, at least that's what most economists are expecting, coming from my world. Anything else for today? We'll obviously be discussing this further on Thursday.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I summarize my understanding and
Michael.
notes so that we have clear direction from you? I think, one, this has been an excellent discussion. We're going to adjust the RFP for the hotel incentive opportunity. Comment made by promoting or not promoting, but making sure that it's apparent that we're on a natural bluff. We don't have FEMA. That's not a policy thing. We'll certainly, we can add that in there. The trend of working at home, we can adjust that and alter that if you want to take it out. If it doesn't matter, we'll just point taken. Is that?
It doesn't matter. It was just,
okay.
The way it was stated was a little strong for
the
me.
Harbor View restaurants looking west, I think that's clearly part of our objectives. We can look at how that language is there, but I'm certainly during a development proposal in the future, we would want something to integrate with the park, which is why we're doing this. The FAR being proposed, that's on its way. City Hall, CMA be united and move Pierce Street to south. That's an important change. We'll tweak that and make sure that that opportunity is known. So just to recap, I think we're all in alignment on our project goals. No issues there. The regulatory framework, use of incentive, we've made that, or we'll make that adjustment for you on Thursday. We're going to tweak the evaluation criteria, increase the points, make it sure that it's clear and that we're encouraging sustainable issues, and we'll work on that. And then the selection schedule, basically what I've heard is that you all want to have us planned for possible referendum in March of 2022. So we will make these changes. Also wanted to encourage you, if you have any Scrivener's things or spellings or things that you want to think, feel free to get them to us. We can make those changes without needing to discuss them on Thursday. If you propose anything to us which is a policy-related matter, then that'll have to come back to you on Thursday night. But, feel free to provide us any comments. And the last thing I want to tell you is that, and we may have these incorporated for you on Thursday, but I do have some changed photographs that are updated to reflect the current park design. We received those late on Friday, so those are basically in hand. I haven't looked at all of them yet. I don't know if I'll tweak anything or not at this point, but what appears to me we have some good photographs. So with that, we'll make those adjustments for you on Thursday night, and if we can get a consensus on those on Thursday, then I think in talking with purchasing, we can have this on the street before the end of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doug.
By the end of 2020.
20.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm thinking referendum. By the end of 2020.
But it will actually be officially released on January 11th, is that correct? That's your proposal?
Purchasing thinks we can get it in the ad the week before Christmas.
Oh, great.
Is that so soon? Yeah, and that'll coincide with our inability to have direct conversations, but we'll have a mechanism for getting all questions in there. The development company, the community of developers that we're looking for will know how to respond to these to this RFP. I'm confident about that. So we just hope that we can generate the interest. So
I would still want to start the 90-day though from January, not from before Christmas.
90 days. We'll have
Yeah.
the 90 days.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Mr. Horn?
Yes, one thing, the most current CDC guidelines is discouraging in-place meetings. And so the question is, we have an executive session with you all later today. Would you want to still have it as an in-place meeting, or would you be comfortable with a Teams?
I think if we do it on Teams, I think I'm comfortable with that. Everyone all right with that?
We can do it on Teams.
Okay, all right.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Ms. Aiken, anything else?
No, sir.
Any new business from the council? No? All right, well then we are adjourned. We'll see everybody Thursday.